Hello and welcome to another Tuesday Talk with Ruby Reese. My name is Killian. I am co-founder at Ruby Reese and at dognutrition.ie, and I will also be your podcast host. This week we have a really important and interesting topic coming up, and that is all about building that relationship between human and dog. So really important for training, for our lifestyles with our dogs, and building that bond is something that I suppose goes back to the core of why we even invite dogs into our lives and why dogs allow us to invite them into our homes and our families. It's something that goes back tens of thousands of years, where humans and dogs have built relationships, built friendships, and have decided to live their lives together. So I suppose this week's topic is one that touches upon every single element of the dog world as we know it today. And we have a very special guest that is coming on and I'm so delighted that the amazing Laura Jennings has taken time out of her week to come on and share, her wealth of knowledge with us. And it's always difficult to compress so much knowledge and so many examples. And so, it's such a broad topic to squash it all in to a little podcast episode, but we've done our very best. I'm so thankful for Laura for giving us some of her time to share that knowledge with us, and I suppose out of respect and out of gratitude for our guests that give up their time for this podcast, we would appreciate it so much if you would go and share some of our episodes on social media. It's really appreciated. Just a link to whatever your favorite episode has been, or an episode you think people might benefit from listening to, because of course if an extra one person can be helped by a podcast episode, it is absolutely phenomenal. And of course it pays back some of that time that we've all invested in putting together these episodes. So we would appreciate you so much if you do that. Of course, on our Instagram page as well, if you go into our Reels section, there are loads of clips in there that you could easily just share to a story if you'd be so kind. So without further ado, we're now going to jump into the topic of relationship building and bond building between canines and humans with Laura Jennings. Hello, Laura. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. Would you do us the pleasure of introducing yourself for anyone that doesn't know you yet?
Yeah, my name is Laura Jennings. I'm a dog trainer based in North County Dublin. I have two of my own dogs and two of my own children. So I spend a lot of time working with families, maybe that are feeling a little bit overwhelmed with managing the dogs and the children. And also my own two dogs compete in dog sports. So for me, in agility specifically, and for agility, that's an off-lead sport. So we spend a lot of time working on a relationship, building motivation, building drive, building engagement. And so they're kind of two of the things that I would really work with the most.
I love that. And it's no surprise then that we decided to focus a little bit on this human-dog bond and building dog relationships with their owners and their families and their guardians. So I suppose let's jump straight into it. How important is trust in this human-dog bond, and how can owners build it?
Yeah, so I suppose trust is probably the number one thing that you do need. You need your dog to trust you, and your dog needs to be able to feel safe with you and understand and feel that you're going to have their back when things are scary. Sometimes I like to think of it like building a bank account, a trust bank account. So every day you're trying to build maybe a trust surplus rather than a deficit. So if you can imagine something that you're doing to your dog every day, through like good intentions, like cleaning their eyes, maybe wiping their feet, putting their harness on. The harness would be a big one, where a lot of dogs don't really like to get a harness put on. And every day, if you're catching them and corralling them and, pulling them out from under the kitchen table or tricking them, the dog is starting to lose trust in us. And that's going to potentially cause a problem further down the line when we're trying to teach things like recall during adolescence. So I like to, whenever I have to do something to my dog that they don't like, I like to potentially try to reinforce those behaviors. So I'm always thinking about creating a deficit. So the one time I do have to do something to my dog that they don't like, maybe an ear infection, we've got a surplus.
And actually, that's really interesting that you mentioned that as well. You know, when you were talking there, I was thinking about our Frenchie, Ruby, and she's like, I suppose, number one, Frenchies can be a very headstrong type of character, and number two, she can also be quite skeptical. You know, she's not the
Yes.
she trusts people. She runs headfirst into situations, but she'd be wary of you. You know, so it's very
Yeah.
very interesting, and we really do need to build that trust, don't we?
No, and for some dogs it can be they can feel like a physical pressure, or some dogs it can be just a mental pressure. So, you know, really wanting them to do something, the dog can feel that pressure. And as you said, like some breeds and some dogs will just feel that pressure a lot different than others. Some dogs will have, sometimes you see it like a pressure bubble, and some dogs will have like a very small one and they're happy to tolerate like a lot. And then some dogs will have a much bigger bubble. And they're kind of visualizations that I like to use to imagine just different breeds, different dogs, different personalities, and how they might feel about things that we have to do to them. But the main thing is that every day, little small tasks that you're doing, you're just creating that deficit. So they might still not like it, but we're going to work on helping them enjoy it, and that something positive happens. So, like adding like a bit of their favorite treat or some of their food, especially if they're a very small puppy, you know, reserving their meal for things like, you know, popping their head in and out of the harness themselves. So like one thing I always get people to do is to hold a harness, but
Mm-hmm.
keep your hand holding the harness very still, and then put the food through the harness. And you know, obviously we're not talking about dogs that like are running off under the table. We have to start the desensitization process long before that. But just ones that maybe are just, you know, are starting to put the head down and kind of say like, I don't really like this. And
Mm-hmm.
we want to start holding the harness pretty still and letting the dog make the choice to come in. Once they feel like they have choice, they will often improve a lot more. But if someone starts to push the hand really close to the harness or really close to the dog, then sometimes the dog feels that pressure, that, and it's more like a
Yeah.
mental and a physical one, I suppose, if you're coming with a harness, and then they can shut down again really quickly. So it's just taking a few minutes, sitting back, and just building that relationship and that trust. And that's where I kind of start, is asking my dogs to do things, positively redirecting them when they're tiny puppies. You know, because what that would be one thing people would often say, like, how do I teach the dog no? And it's not so much about teaching them no, but maybe teaching them what we want instead. And that's another way that you're going to start building up the trust with them. So when they're like very tiny, you're just trying to positively redirect them to things that you like. And that's another way that will help build up trust, that it's not always them kind of being in trouble. You know, they are this like
Mm-hmm.
little tiny baby that we've just taken from their mom, and the world is going to be very confusing and scary.
Yeah, yeah. And how much does consistency play a role in training and communication with a dog, and particularly in building this trust?
Yeah, well, 100%. So there is a phrase like random actions will get random results.
Mm-hmm.
So we do want to be really consistent. The other thing is things take time. So
Yeah.
oftentimes people will ring me and say, like, I'm teaching, you know, my puppy or my dog this, but it's not working. And, you know, obviously we're going to have a look and see, like, what's the timing like? You know, the reinforcements, are they enough? And so on. But oftentimes it's just that we need to be consistent for a long time. It is one of the biggest dog training hacks, is just being consistent for a very long time. And that's going to really help the dogs understand what we're looking for. You know, I suppose, and just being a bit open minded as well, that it is a tiny baby when you take them home at first. And like when you take your children home from the hospital, you know, you're not expecting to have them toilet trained, you know, not putting things in their mouth, you know, all those things done within the first, you know, year even. We're going to know that that's all going to be a process and a journey. And the same for our puppies. Sometimes people feel a lot of pressure
Mm.
themselves. They really want to get it all right, and they think that everything's going to be horribly wrong, and they're doing it all wrong, and they're often not. It just consistency. It's just going to take a little bit of time for the dog to learn what we want.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think you're so right. You can achieve great things with consistency. I mean, even our Ruby will go up. We say, do you want to go for a shower? And she'll go up the stairs and into the
Oh,
shower
that's
for
good.
us on her own. But it's only because I have to shower her. I'm the only one that can do it.
Oh,
And we
right.
do the same routine every single time, as in we sit in the same spot on the top of the
Yes.
stairs and dry her off. Like it has
Okay.
to be exactly the same, and she
Yeah.
gets it. She knows, okay, we don't love it, but we've got to do it, and it's a 10-step plan, and once we get to the end of it, there'll be a treat. So yeah.
Yeah, she understands. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like that. One of my dogs, he has really long, thick nails, and he still doesn't like love getting his nails cut. But like that, he has choice. He comes over, I'll do some nails, we'll get some food. If he needs his paw back or he needs to leave for a second, that's fine. You could do that. But then he comes back because obviously he wants, to get
Mhm.
his little treat and get the job done. I'm sure as well. But yeah, no, consistency absolutely helps.
And to show that to people out there that think that I'm a great dog trainer now in my own home, we can't do the nails. So you win some, you lose some. You win some, you lose some. Sometimes the
Yeah, no,
dog
the,
has
the
to
nails
really.
are definitely, are definitely tough, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Ruby definitely isn't into that. So you can
Yeah.
have some wins and
Yeah,
some things
and
where you
just
say,
one thing
okay.
on the nails. So, and I suppose
Mm,
it's for dog training in general. A lot of the times we tend to lump large pieces of criteria. So, for example, we might start off by showing them the clippers, clipping the clippers without going near the dog, and then we might start getting the dog to let us touch their paw, hold their paw, maybe touch a nail. And then the other thing that a lot of dogs don't like is when we go to cut the toenails, we really have to like isolate the nail and the toe. And that can be a step that a lot of people miss out on because, they've touched the paw, showed the clippers, and then come in and hold the toe and cover it. But actually, there's probably a few more steps along the way that can definitely help improve the dog's tolerance and comfort levels around getting their nails cut.
yeah, break it down into probably more manageable steps would be
Yeah, and
a
that's just
good
one.
plan. Be more
We all do it.
patient.
Like yeah, I'm guilty of as well. You want to train something, and you want to do it pretty quickly, and so we tend to lump pieces
Yeah,
that we could really split right the way down.
yeah, skipping the important steps. So yeah,
Yes,
we're
well,
all guilty of it.
yes, absolutely, including myself.
So we're now opening it up because we all make mistakes as we've seen. Are there
Absolutely.
any other common mistakes that people might make that might be harming their relationship with their dog along the way without them intending to?
Yeah. So, I suppose recall and coming back to that topic of things that our dogs don't like. So, maybe like that, yeah, you're going to put the harness on, or you're going to like clean their eyes or something, and then you're using your recall cue. And that's probably going to poison that cue, and your dog's not going to have that like positive association with it. So
Mm,
so that would be one thing for sure. I would try to save my recall for very nice things and not things that the dogs don't like. Um, Other things might be maybe like nagging them unintentionally again. So, and especially as dogs transition from that puppy stage into adolescence, that's something you would see a lot. Like puppies can be very good and very amenable and kind of biddable and want to do the work. And then, bam, adolescent comes and now the dog doesn't want to listen to its caregiver, its owner. And what you tend to get is then we start to kind of nag at them. So like their name over and over and over and over and over and over. And then
mm,
the dog starts to just really switch off and realize that, actually I don't really, need to engage with this person now because they're becoming white noise. So I would always get people to say the dog's name and then the cue, wait 5 seconds, and then repeat it. And if I feel I need to do it 2 to 3 times, I'm going to change something up. I'm not going to keep going. I'm going to
mm,
make it a bit easier for the dog. And that's obviously going to depend on what you are teaching them or asking of them. So, for example, if it was maybe like a look at me and I'm asking them and they're not responding, maybe I might come around in front of them and, maybe I might bring the trade up to my eye and be like, do you remember this cue? I'll make it
mm,
easier. Or I might move further away from potentially something they're looking at something they're watching dogs playing or something like that and they're finding it very hard to respond to what you're asking, so maybe moving a little bit further away and then asking again. You'd be amazed the difference a meter makes.
mm,
So then the other thing is going to be if our dogs are making mistakes or they want to leave the session. So the dog, we're trying to train our dog something and the dog keeps wandering off sniffing. We can be very quick to blame the dog and say, oh, they find it boring or they don't want to do it, and they always do this. But sometimes what it can be is our teaching. So maybe we were a little bit late with rewarding. Maybe I see this sometimes that the owner maybe missed a few things that the dog did, and the dog was like, "Oh, I thought it was that. Maybe it's not that." And then they leave. And different personalities will react differently. So some dogs will wander off sniffing and leave, and then other dogs might potentially start barking, maybe like scratch at you. You know, they'll do different things depending on their personalities. And then another big one that damages the relationship would be maybe too much of a good thing when you go outside. So maybe, and assuming this is a puppy that enjoys this, so too much play with other dogs, meeting everybody, you know, people at maybe the school run, everybody's petting the puppy, and the puppy is getting so much external reinforcement that there's not much coming from you. And then that dog is going to grow up maybe thinking that as they go outside, they don't really engage with you. They play with other dogs, they say hello to everybody, you know, around them. And then you're kind of left as they get a little bit older with a dog that you're really struggling to get their attention. So I really like to station my walks. So we'll do maybe like 10 minutes of play on our walk, 10 minutes of training, 10 minutes of sniffing, maybe 10 minutes of, you know, being normal, walking around, meeting the people and the dogs. But definitely we're trying to keep the pendulum. I'm trying to get the pendulum a little bit more in my favor so that I am a really good source of fun and reinforcement to my dogs when we get outside. So it's not just other people are fun and rewarding when we get out. So yeah, just making sure that you engage with your dog, you know, not sticking the headphones in and you know, marching them out and then wondering maybe why they might not listen to you. So we have to give them attention to get the attention back, I suppose.
Makes total sense. And even if you want to listen to music or a podcast or whatever along your walk, you know, like I often do, but then I'll check in with Ruby as well.
Yes. And I think as they get older and they're, you know, they know everything, it's a bit different. I think it's especially during those, I often think like about adolescence and, you know, definitely that year. And I really want to give everything to that dog in that year. Because that's when they're going to be, you know, a little bit more challenging to say the least. You know, and I want to really put everything I have into, especially during that adolescent stage. And then, you know, as they mature and you've built that strong relationship, it pays off, you know, for the next, you know, please God, 13, 14 years.
Yeah, definitely. I would absolutely will do. You know, it's anything you can train on in a kind of a younger age is going to pay dividends in the future. And I'm thinking now about like body language and, you know, kind of the communication signals that our dogs are sending us. How does having a basic understanding of what our dog's trying to communicate with us through body language going to help us with our communication with them and build that trust?
Oh, to me, I feel like it's everything. It's the basis of everything, but it's hard. You are literally learning a new foreign language, and I don't expect anybody that I work with to be good at it straight away. And so I don't know, you know, anybody listening how well they might know body language, but as we're training the dogs are going to maybe experience mild discomfort. So maybe they did something that I didn't want them to do and I kind of withheld the reinforcement. The dog is going to be a little bit uncomfortable like with that, and they might display some like mild stress body language or unease. So maybe things like fidgeting, so suddenly scratching, maybe checking their bits out, licking their nose. So there's two types of licks. So sometimes when they're looking for food and anticipation of food, they lick side to side. And I always get people to remember like the emoji. But when they're a bit uncomfortable, it's usually straight up to the nose. And sometimes it can be really obvious. Obviously, great if you have a dog that's very obvious. And sometimes it's just little flicks. Yawning. Some dogs might even sneeze when they're a little bit uncomfortable. One of my dogs sneezes when he's happy. So just to keep things confusing. But it could be a sneeze, a yawn, a little look away, a little flick away. And they're very like, you know, usually kind of little mild signs that the dog might be a bit uncomfortable. And the way I get people to think about it is just watch your dog and see that they start fidgeting. So they're kind of, you know, doing lots of things. And it's just a sign that maybe they're a little bit uncomfortable in regards to the training. That might mean that we might need to make it a little bit easier. Or it could be, you know, they are sitting in the corner with like a chew toy, and then maybe that's just letting us know that our dog might be feeling a bit uneasy that we're walking around. So obviously if we can see that early, that's going to progress, that's going to stop the dog progressing on to something more serious like, you know, growl or snap or a bite. So that's the first, and then I often think it then changes. Maybe they get like a little bit more serious. So the start of it might be that kind of fidgety, like scratching and checking themselves. And then it might change to a bit more serious. So a bit more still, a bit more stiff. Maybe the ears might come forward. Maybe the hair might stand up a little bit. you sometimes might see the whites of the eye. So in general, you don't normally see that, but when the dog show the whites of the eye, it usually is they're asking to move back, or they've been panting and then they suddenly stop, and then they pant and they stop. So again, it's all tension, stiff, stillness. So again, when I see that, I tell my clients that we do want to take action when we see that, because that might progress on to like being vocal, or maybe coming off their feet, or running away, depending on the dog's personality. So it's kind of nearly like little steps. And I tried to make it as simple as possible. So, obviously the kind of fidgety ones, we're going to watch out for that. And then the stiff still, we're starting to take things a bit more seriously. And then, obviously the more obvious signs that our dogs are uncomfortable or overwhelmed or frustrated, you're barking, coming off their feet, maybe running at something. But being able to read those very early ones might potentially stop the dog going escalating up and up. So little things like when you're taking them out to the park, if people are coming over to say hello, or dogs are coming over to say hello, you want to really be able to read your dog's body language, because that's the only way you can tell if they actually are having a positive or a neutral experience, or a bad one. So we say that our puppies, we want them to have a positive or neutral experience. I think lots of neutral ones definitely helps make dogs easier as they mature, but we do want some positive ones too. But what we definitely don't want is too many negative ones. And like that, if I see those fidgety things, I'm going to think, okay, we need to, observe this, maybe take a little step back. But absolutely, if the dog starts to get very still or wants to run away, then, that's, we really need to advocate for the puppy there, because, one experience like that is, probably not the end of the world. But if that's happening 2-3 times on your walk every day, you might start to have the dog that goes up the ladder, and then they start to kind of bark across the park, and usually what might happen is they're a bit fidgety, then they start to sit down and kind of stare across the way. And then, as they mature, they start to become a bit better at communicating, and then they start to vocalize. Yeah. And that's normally when people might think, oh, this is probably a problem. So if we have been able to see it earlier, that's just going to prevent a lot of problems. So, we're kind of talking about reactivity there, but that also implies living with your children. So, my dogs live with my children, and for some crazy reason, I got a puppy when I had a 1-year-old, and I had a 2-year-old dog, and I had a 4-year-old child. So, reading their body, my dogs were not immune to being stressed by my children. Like, let me just say that. I was not immune to being stressed by my children, never mind the dog. So, absolutely, I have to watch their body language and think, guys, maybe this is a little bit much, maybe we'll take the ball out the back and not maybe kick over their bed. But it's also being able to read that, because sometimes I might go to someone's home and they say, the dog is amazing with the child. And she is amazing. Of course she's amazing, and the child is amazing. This is all true love and care. It's not a bad thing. But I'm seeing that dog is doing a lot of signs that they're uncomfortable. And I'd say, she is really good, and she there's lots of times where she does like interacting with the child, but actually she doesn't enjoy, maybe 2 hands coming at her face. A lot of dogs don't like when you put their 2 hands to them, and maybe the children want to come in and kind of give them a kiss. A lot of dogs don't like that. And the same thing, you just want to notice what your dog is not enjoying, because that's and we're speculating, and we have to always look at it in context. So, my child just came over and, put their 2 hands on them and gave them a kiss. And I see my dog stands up, scratches, lip licks, yawns, and walks away. That's an indicator that the dog might not be enjoying that interaction. And as I said, like, one thing is not the end of the world, but if this is happening all day long for, months and months, we just don't want the dog to keep to escalate that to like a growl or something.
Totally. And what I love in everything you've just said here about body language, observe. Number one is like, just open your eyes and like you say, kind of consider what your dog might be feeling right now, and start joining together the dots. And, you also mentioned that your dog sneezes where others might be kind of not feeling very positive emotions. Yours isn't usually happy when it sneezes. So it's an individual thing, and we love to generalize, but in the end they're all individuals. So opening your eyes, observing your own dog, I think is so powerful, because and
with the positive body language, so like how I would be able to isolate that my dog sneezes when he's happy is because the rest of his body is loose. he's wiggly, he's moving like in, asking for like attention from my kids. Or maybe it's like we've taken out a toy that he loves, he'd be like sneezing, he'd sneeze the whole way to the garden to play with it. And so it's putting it in context. So it's the same with the waggy tail. So
Yeah.
sometimes a waggy tail on its own doesn't mean a happy dog. It just means the dog is, starting to become aroused. And if it's paired with the whole wiggly loose bum and soft face, then yes, it probably is quite happy. But if it's wagging it, but everything else is stiff, then the dog is probably not happy. And sometimes, because obviously we grew up with that, like the dog wagging its tail. But it's everything in context, and it's the whole picture, never anything in isolation.
Yeah, but it's going to help so many people advocate for their dogs as well, when and really understand what they're feeling once you start opening your eyes and kind of looking what's going on in context. So love that.
Yes.
Let's talk getting practical, because there might be people listening in. I'm guessing if someone stumbled upon this episode, or rushed away to listen to it, they might be struggling a little bit with this part. So maybe first of all, some kind of day-to-day daily routine type things that we could start trying to bring in, particularly for a dog maybe that's struggling a bit more than your average dog maybe.
So I suppose little things like we were talking about earlier, taking time out during the walks to maybe play with your puppy, do some training, but also at home. So when I have a puppy, I always reserve parts of their meal back for training. And what I normally do is I'll put it in like a clear lunchbox, and I'll put it either on top of the coffee machine or near the kettle. And every time I boil the kettle, I'll just take a little bit and just do a little bit with the dog. This is the thing. It doesn't have to be like massive chunks. It just needs to be little consistent things. So that's one way that I find really helps to strengthen the bond with them. The other thing, obviously, is not picking them up so much. So a lot of puppies don't really enjoy being picked up. Of course, there's going to be exceptions to the rule, but a lot of puppies don't really like to be picked up, or dogs. So what I try to do is to just teach my puppies to come to me. So if I need to get them, in from the front door, I'll just practice their recall like that. I have their food ready. I want to run over the kids. If the dog has run off with their socks or their tea towel, well, it wouldn't be their tea towel, but the same thing, like the dogs know that the kids can run and get that food, and very quickly they're going to drop what they've taken and come flying in when the kids come and open the little plastic container. And so like that, I teach the kids not to go and take things off the dog. It's hard. It is, there's no denying it. It's very hard. I had a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old with a puppy and a 2-year-old dog. It's not easy, but just we always want to preserve the relationship between the children and the dogs. The same thing with maybe older kids. So I want to take some time. My kids are older now, and then my dogs are older too. But like that, it'd be very easy for me to say, like, oh, will you just go, stick his harness on for me there? But again, like most dogs are not loving that. So again, I'm going to take a little bit of food and, get them to put it on until they are comfortable. But I'm not going to maybe get the kids to do that. The same thing, like, oh, will you grab his bowl? It's very easy to ask the kids to do those easy jobs, but the same thing, anything where that the dog might be a little bit uncomfortable, I want to do to make sure that I'm able to watch the dog's body language. Because as much as I do try to teach the kids, they're obviously kids, and they're, want to get it done so they can get back onto the Xbox or whatever it is they're doing. Trick training as well. So I love trick training. I feel like it's a way to train the dogs with minimal pressure. You're just training them for the sake of it, for the love of it. And whereas when you're teaching them, like, to leave something or recall, sometimes we can feel a little bit of pressure because we want to use this in real life. But just sitting down, doing a little bit of trick training or playing some games. So different types of games, things like personal play. So you'll have the dog kind of playing with you, or even food play. If your dog isn't like super into toys, well, first thing I'd say is we need to check the toys, because when I go to people's houses, a lot of the toys are just not that appealing, the kind of hard ropes and rubbery things, where my dogs have toys that are more like fleece and fluffy. And sometimes I find for very small puppies, the cat section can nearly be better. Now, obviously not the feathers and stuff, but just some of the toys are more dangly and soft. And then I normally tie things onto them, like a dressing gown cable or a dressing gown cord or a lead. And like that, I can just run around with it. The same thing, I might ask the kids to do that. That's a nice one for the kids to do, and they keep the toy low. If they have a very small, short toy, the puppy could obviously, or the dog could be jumping up, grabbing at their hands. So a little bit to play with them. And the other one is playing with food. So things like scavenger hunts, or even just little simple games like you can even ask the kids to help with this one. Toss a piece to the side, and then you ask the puppy to find it, toss it to the other side, and anything that your dog enjoys. So I could give you a whole list of the things that my dog does, but obviously each dog is going to be very different based on possibly their predatory motor pattern. So the eye, stalk, chase. So what has been bred into your dog and what has been bred out. Obviously my dogs like sniffing, all dogs like sniffing, but it wouldn't be their top thing. Their top thing is working with me. They just want that engagement. They want that, the tug and the chase. Where other dogs, you might be able to reinforce them with some extra sniffing where you're doing it together. So I think that's the main thing, is anything that you're doing with your dog. And even the likes of, say, fetch, or like chasing a tennis ball, like it's great to have something that your dog loves, but I feel like you're always rewarding away from you and not so much like with
True.
you. So, and obviously, if a dog loves it, we definitely don't want to like say no more ball, but maybe things like hiding the ball or getting the ball on a string. And so you can do a bit more engaging together.
Absolutely. And absolutely, and I can totally identify with that. Like Ruby loves doing tricks, and all of our dogs that in the past, I grew up with St. Bernards for years, and they all loved doing some form of trick. And no, not every trick is going to be the kind of the fave for everyone, but they'll all have their kind of one or two bits that they love doing and love getting treated for, and that's a really, really nice kind of bonding experience. You're so right.
I've even played some games with my dogs when they were little where a puppy just kept running off with like the toilet roll holders and things like that. So we used that. So we just saved up all the toilet roll holders and then tossing them side to side to get them to play, getting them to chase them. With my youngest dog, I struggled a little bit with getting him to play with me. It's kind of interesting. So my older dog, he had, we'd gone to profs and we'd gone to the world championships, and then we got the next dog, and it's like you feel this pressure that you want to do it, and inadvertently I'm probably putting that pressure onto the dog or onto the puppy when we're trying to play. And I said to my friend, like, God, when the kids are running around, like he's chasing them with the toy. And then she said, that's because your kids are not thinking about going to profs in 3 years. And it was so true. So like that, it comes back to that thing we were saying, the pressure, even if it's just mental. I'm like, oh, he's not really playing with me. So we had to strip it right back. So sometimes I would sit in the garden with him and throw grass, and he would just love chasing the grass. And then the toilet roll holders, tossing them because he loved shredding things up. So that was like a really nice thing to add in for him because that's what he liked. Tea towels were the other thing that he loved to play with. So it was just really trying to find my dog. Of course, now he plays with toys, and he doesn't play with toilet roll holders and tea towels and stuff. He does play with toys, but we just had to go on that little journey to find out what he liked, what ticked his boxes, so that he actually just really enjoyed playing with me. And I had to probably take a step back and not be so intense maybe, and take a lesson from how my children were moving around. That's the thing, kids keep moving, they keep moving the toy away. Sometimes people now I wouldn't have done this because I already knew, but sometimes people can keep pushing the toy into the dog's face, and obviously in real life prey is never going to jump into your mouth. It's going to be running the other way. So you just have to think of that and act like a rabbit or a squirrel and keep moving. As soon as the dog like is holding it and they go to grab it again, you're like, whoo, let go, the rabbit's gone. And that really does get them more engaged in the game.
It makes total sense, and I think sometimes we all kind of, no matter what it is, we kind of get a little bit too serious and we want loose leash walking and this and that.
Yeah.
But like if we look back to the history of where humans and dogs started interacting with each other, it was about relationships. It was about, hanging out together and having a bit of crack and having a great old time, So it's, I think that's something we'd all benefit from, just like you say, from learning from kids. Just enjoy it a little bit and take a bit of the seriousness out of it. Yeah. And that's the same, like when you watch the dogs play as well. So and I would observe my dogs playing a lot, because that gives you a good idea of what they like. So little things like, I suppose rules around play as well, because obviously sometimes they might get a little bit overexcited. So like if they grab skin, the game's going to stop. And that's what my dogs would do with each other. Like they were out, I had them out playing the other day, the two of them were running around, and one of them kind of like slammed into the side of the other one. And
and that dog would not play with the other dog until like for the rest of the walk. He was just like, nope, game's over. You hurt me. I don't want to play with you. And I suppose Dad was obviously very serious because he did really bang him. But little things like, if you grab me a skin, the game is going to stop, and it's going to stop for a few minutes, and then we might start again. And I think, dogs will do that as well. They'll be biting their faces, but then one of them will like nip too hard, and then that's it. The game has stopped.
Then it's over.
So yeah, and we can do that with the toys as well. Like, sometimes people say like, oh, what I do? They keep jumping and biting me, and then it's just like the game stops, but just for a short while, and then we can start again. And letting them know like, oh, super, really good, as they are not biting your hands. If your dog is really bad, because some dogs do keep kind of coming up, a longer toy that usually works really well, and keeping it a lot lower, that usually really helps, especially with the children.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love as well having like an exit strategy. I remember when Ruby was a puppy, and like you say, kind of getting bitey towards the end of a play session. We realized that she loved belly rubs, and we knew that would be like a good way for going in for like, okay, let's close out our play sessions like that. But now she actually,
very good.
She can also tell us, okay, lie on my back, with my belly up, give me belly rubs. We're ending this play session now. She has kind of a way of communicating with us. Okay, chase is well and truly over,
Yeah, so and it's like what you said, just being a good observer, you're able to figure that out from her, that this was her, her way to say that we're finished the session. And it's like one of my dogs would go and go and go and go. Yeah. He would never want to stop playing. Playing is his thing. And of course I enhanced it and, brought it to the surface too. But sometimes what helps him to kind of know that the toy is now gone away is a little food scatter. So a little bit of food into the grass just helps to bring him, back down a little bit. And like that, it's predictable, to the end. Like once the food has come out and you're sipping the grass, then that's probably the end of the play.
Yeah, definitely. And it's amazing once you've started observing your dogs. The examples we've just given are so simple, everyday, easy peasy things. It's not a complex contraption. It's nothing you have to train on for weeks and months for. You can just understand your dog and realize how you can kind of get them to where you want them to be. So it's lovely just to kind of simplify it a bit. We're not oversimplifying that, this is not easy stuff either. Relationship building in any context is tough.
Yes.
But I think
and there is a phrase, they say dog training is simple, but it's not easy. And it is so true. It is like relatively simple, but it's definitely not easy when you're in the throes of real life.
Yeah, definitely. We briefly interrupt this podcast to bring you a message from our dear sponsors, ourselves at dognutrition.ie. We work with canine nutrition clients across Ireland and have specialised knowledge in products and options that are available for our dogs right here. We tailor each nutrition plan to each individual dog and family and their needs and means. We also take into consideration how they want to feed and what they have available locally, as well as where they like to shop. A good nutrition plan doesn't have to be complicated, and we can slot it into the life you lead. Thank you for your attention. Now let's jump back into the podcast. So now we've spoken a bit about having great time and playing and enjoying ourselves and getting the energy up and trying to get our dogs involved in loads of fun activities. But maybe we don't want our dogs doing everything. So how can owners or guardians maybe effectively set boundaries but still maintain positive relationships?
Yeah, so I suppose the number one thing I would say is management. So whenever I bring a puppy into the house, that's the first thing we do. We create management. So the baby gates, the pens, like they're not very pretty sometimes, but it's only for a short while we teach the puppy. So as the puppy walks in the door, obviously that you've just taken them away from their mom, their litter mates, essentially just kidnap this tiny baby, and we have to teach them all about our world. So management is going to be really important. So I'll give you an example. I was with a client a couple of weeks ago, and the puppy went behind the sofa. And being the dog trainer, you get up straight away when the puppy goes behind the sofa. And I said, "Oh, she's like chewing your blinds." Like they were all like chewed. And
Hmm.
I mean, she was only like a tiny little thing.
Yeah.
She was making a really good job at it. So I suppose from a management point of view, I'm like, okay, let's just lift them up. And actually, the way the sofa was, I was like, we could actually turn the sofa just a little bit, and that's going to stop her having access to go in behind there and to the blinds. So that's a management strategy. That puppy's not going to be. Oh, sorry. And the other thing we did was we got her like a little olive wood bone,
Hmm.
and she sent me a picture of her sitting chewing it. So that was giving her an appropriate outlet for something that she loved, chewing wood. So that was just a really easy way to address that while we taught her a leave it and to come away from things and let her grow up. She's teething. She's going to bite things. She's going to chew things. And um, if for example she said no, I want to leave the sofa that way, she's going to be given out to that puppy, all day long. It's going to be like, come here, come here, come here, leave it, no, no, no. And the pup's probably going to get a little bit frustrated with that and not really enjoy being around her. And then maybe she will go play with her sometimes. But it's just if you can manage something, I do. So
Yeah.
like, lifting the expensive rugs, um, only starting off with access to like maybe just the kitchen. Depends on the layout of your house. Like for us, we have like kind of a small downstairs and sitting room, so we kind of just go with that because it's fairly open plan. But if you had like maybe carpet in your sitting room, I probably wouldn't give my puppy access there until they were potty trained or toilet trained. um the same thing with going upstairs. Like once they learn those stairs, they're going to be
Yeah.
a lot of fun to go up there. And especially if you have like kids, like older kids, like the socks, the pants, everything is all over the floor. And if we haven't managed to train our kids to clean up after themselves, we're probably not going to be very successful in getting that puppy to leave them straight away.
Yeah.
So management, so the baby gates, and slowly giving them more access as they're getting more trained, if that makes sense. But it's
Hmm.
going to really, really help the relationship. The same thing like with the back garden. Now, I wouldn't know anything about this, but some people really like their gardens and their plants and they've put a lot of time into it. Next of all, this little puppy arrives and is causing carnage to the plants they've been growing for like 10 years. So the same thing, I'm going to say, right, let's let's go over to Woody's or whatever and get that green hard netting, and we're just going to block that around for now. In the
Yeah.
meantime, we're going to give the puppy an area that the puppy can play in. Like, depends on what the puppy wants to do. Maybe if it's digging, we might like get it a little sandpit and hide some like really interesting things in there for the puppy to encourage the puppy that way. And then also we're going to teach like, a good recall, a good leave it. So, eventually when the puppy is trained, we can then slowly remove the management strategies we put in. It's a bit like a seesaw. Your management is really high because your training is obviously low, and as your training is like increasing, your management can start to decrease, and then ultimately you live with your sensible adult dogs that don't do all these crazy things.
It's amazing,
So
and
yeah,
it
I
makes
think
so much sense.
management.
Yeah, management
Yeah.
absolutely makes so much sense, and like you say, kind of setting yourself up for success in a way, and keeping as many of the positive or neutral situations, and kind of trying to avoid the negative ones creeping in. And you're kind
Yes,
of
yes.
on a good
It
path.
just it just preserves the relationship. If you don't have to be at your puppy constantly, you can just, work on, there's when we get a new puppy, there's basically nothing that the puppy could do. Everything has been moved, shoved, pushed, and then the puppy has an abundance of things it's going to love to chew. And just coming back to the kind of the toys, like I go into people's houses and they have spent an absolute fortune, piles of toys, but they're all tend to be like those kind of ropes and rubbers, and they're really marketed
Mhm.
at us more than what a dog loves. So, changing that up and getting them to get more like natural chews, like that I was saying, the olive wood, the mine loves like things like cow horns, buffalo horns, those kind of things that they can actually sit down and really chew on, so that they don't ever learn that my skirting boards are in any way enticing because they've got a basket of things that's way more nice. And then they do have, like, don't get me wrong, they do have some toys,
Yeah.
but for the most part, when I take the toys out, they're for us to engage with. So they're like,
Mhm.
yes, here comes the ball and the rope and the fluff and the thing. But those toys usually come out for us to engage with. And just saying that, it just means that I have to make sure I put time into like giving my puppies that outlet. Because if
Yeah.
I'm just taking them all away and they have nothing then to play, like, to run around with, um, then they might start to grab at the clothes and, do those things as well that we don't like them to do. Like the teenagers wearing Uggs is like a big one, because obviously that's sheepskin. Like the
Yeah.
puppies are just mad for them. But like that again, management, I would just say, let's just put those Uggs up for the next few weeks until our puppy, has a basic understanding of leaving things. Because sheepskin is going to be very enticing, and that soft, fluffy thing they just want to grab their teeth into.
Yeah, it's amazing the things you'd forget. Like when you look at Uggs, I don't particularly think sheepskin, but of course, yeah, it makes
No.
entire sense.
I think I've been around a lot of teenagers in their Uggs with their puppies, like having a great time.
Yeah, I was gonna say I probably haven't seen Uggs in 2 decades either, so might explain why I'm not thinking about sheepskin.
Yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah.
And now you've had loads of experience with dogs and probably worked through so many lovely moments with different dogs and different human dog teams. Let's say, is there any kind of standout rewarding moment you've seen in working with relationships between humans, dogs, and their bond?
Yeah, I think I was saying that I do agility, and
Yeah.
that's an off-lead sport, so you have to have like good recall, good relationship. But the other thing about agility, it's on the clock, so it's the fastest dog wins. And if your
Mhm.
dog's not confident and is a little bit in any way worried, they're not going to be able to open up and go fast. They'll be slow because they might, in case that you might tell them off or something. So with that in mind, for me, obviously achieving those things with my own dogs was amazing. But even better was when my clients got to compete at the World Championships. Especially like I had one client in particular that I trained from when the puppy was tiny, right up to that moment when she stood on that like world stage wearing the Ireland jersey. And for me, that you just can't get any better. She's happy, she's fast, she's in this crazy environment, and she just has eyes for her mom and her job. So that like is obviously the ultimate dog
Mhm.
trainer like moment. You like, to know that you can learn it yourself and you can train your own dogs is brilliant. But to be able to pass that knowledge on to another person who can then give it to their dogs is obviously amazing. So that would be probably the big moment. But and every day there's little moments. So
Yeah.
like when I'm out with somebody and the puppy like looks, or maybe it's a teenager, actually probably even more so when it's a teenager. The dog looks at something and then looks back at the owner, and then the owner sees it. And then it's like, yay, and their reinforcement. To me, it's those little things. And it's not even that the dog did it, it's that the owner saw it and noticed it and reinforced it. Because the more that they do things like that, then the more the dog will offer it. And especially if you have a dog that's maybe his recall is struggling, if the owner can spot those little good choices that the dog makes, that's obviously going to make a massive
Mhm.
difference to their recall down the line. So yeah, it's probably like there obviously is that big moment, but then lots of little ones every day. I just love when the owner just sees the good choice that their dog made, and not just kind of sees the things that the dog's doing wrong, because it's very easy to focus on what we want to change. But when they start to see when the dog is trying, that for me is just great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's obviously like Crufts is the creme de la creme of experiences and of a lot of people would absolutely dream of being there, but it's lovely as well to hear that kind of everyone with their dog can have their own little Crufts moment as well in
Yes.
whatever they're kind of hoping to achieve, because not every dog is going to be cut out for that kind of level of sportsmanship or sports dogship.
Yeah, yes.
But
Madness
like
probably is the right word.
madness could potentially be used as a describer as well. Yeah, but I think it's amazing that that people should definitely have the confidence to move towards whatever goals they're working on with their dogs as well, and to keep at it.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the thing is, you can always have your big goal, and we want this is the goal, and but then sometimes what I try to do is to get people to then forget about it. That's the goal. That's what we want to achieve. But then to just try to be in the moment each day and just train the dog that's in front of them you know, because sometimes we have like that big goal, which I absolutely do believe in, but if you're really focused on that constantly, it can add to that pressure.
Yeah.
So that is the goal. Let's park it now and just focus on the day to day, the moment to moment, the session to session, the walk to walk, and just see what the dog has given us, and how we can just reinforce more of what we like, and get coming back to that, observe, and what does this dog like to do.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
yeah, I think setting the big goals, or setting any goal,
Mm-hmm.
but then, just really looking at the dog in front of us on this day, because obviously, we were saying earlier on, dogs with allergies, dogs with conditions, adolescents, day to day, the things can be up and down for them. If you had allergies, you might have like tummy problems or skin issues, and you might have a really hard day, and we might have it, the dog might have it, and that's okay. But it's just seeing that the dog we have in front of us on that day, and the next day is a new day, and so on.
Love it. Absolutely brilliant, honestly. And it's, it's so refreshing to as well kind of talk through. We've mentioned a couple of times that, none of us are perfect. There will be mistakes made. But I think, trying to do a lot of the good things a lot of the time is going to take you, a lot of the way, won't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, 100%. Not people not being too hard on themselves is probably the main thing. I think once you're conscious of it and you're trying, you're off to a good start.
Yeah, exactly. Laura, thank you so, so much for coming on. It's been an absolute education and a pleasure. And
Thank you for
I
having
am
me.
sure that everybody else that's listening in is going to have learned as much as I did as well over the last while. So it's been really, really good speaking with you. And I wish you a lovely evening. And thanks once again.
Thank you. Thanks a
Thanks.
million.
Bye.
Bye.
And once again, a huge thank you to Laura for coming on and sharing such great knowledge with us. It's an absolute pleasure to have such brilliant guests come on and chat about some of their knowledge. It is absolutely appreciated, that knowledge share. So we will be back with another episode very, very soon, in 2 weeks' time. If you would be so kind, it would be amazing if you could like and share and subscribe to this podcast wherever you possibly can. It is really, really appreciated. You can also find our social media handles and our website, as well as Laura Jennings' social media, and all of the links there in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening in. You are so valued as an audience as well. We appreciate it so, so much. And we'll be back with another episode of Tuesday Talks with Ruby Reese very, very soon.